what I want to talk about tonight, it's very interesting to me that exactly where Bill and I are translating in Judges 19, 20, and 21 is basically a picture in the Word of God of what's going on in our society. And I think that if there's a message in Judges 19, 20, and 21, it's that there's evil on both sides, and a lot of times there's a whole bunch of collateral damage people that are hurt. And so it really is up to the family. You know, Galatians tells us to be especially good to the household of faith. And we want to do that with our prayers. We want to do that with our encouraging word, but it also means that we need to position ourselves to be able to not be a burden to others and instead be able to help others. If you remember Ephesians 4, when it says, you know, let him who stole steal no more, but it doesn't end there. You know, it doesn't say like quit stealing like the Ten Commandments. It says if you're stealing, quit, and then get a job, work with your hands so you can give to the one who needs. And that's always God's heart, that God's family takes care of each other, supports each other. You do your best to make sure you can take care of yourself, and then you position yourself to be able to take care of others. And these are really wacko times. You know, I was reading a little bit about the defunding of police, and I noticed in one city, and gosh, I should have made a note of this, and maybe one of you out there listening knows this, but anyway, it was the city council or something like that voted to defund the police in their area or cut down on the police money in their area. But the council immediately voted themselves money for personal protection. So we're going to defund the police so you don't have protection, but we're going to take your tax money and hire personal protection.
Minneapolis.
That was Minneapolis.
That was Minneapolis. I mean,
Yep.
to me, that is like so incredibly brazenly evil. And you know, if people right now, we're in a position where we can really talk. If you know anybody who isn't a Christian or who's sitting on the fence or hasn't seen the need for Christianity, or maybe they haven't seen the battle between good and evil, you know, I mean, just that itself is so brazen in the battle between good and evil. I defund protection for you and I use your money to protect me. That just blows me away that there are people in positions of authority that do that. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're going to see more and more and more of that, because what happens when things are tough in the environment, people start taking care of themselves. They start being very selfish, and they start stealing and taking from others. And we're going to see that. So we need to be prepared to help ourselves and then help others around us. So I'd like to go to Judges chapter 19, because Judges chapter 19, 20, 21 are an interesting picture of how really genuinely bad things can get. Now, I said Judges 19, but I want to start in Judges chapter 20, I believe. I think it's Judges 20. Let's see where it talks about, let's see. I can probably find it. I should have written down these scriptures and I didn't. My fault, guys. Sorry. I'm looking for the verse that talks about Phineas being the high priest. And it's
2028.
2028. Thank you, sir.
I think so.
That sounds about right. That sounds absolutely about right. Yes. Okay. Now we're reading Judges 19, so we're at the end of Judges. Now Judges was a 350-year period or so, So normally when you think, well, I'm reading in Judges 19, this is the very end of the book of Judges, you're thinking this would be very close to Saul being the king and Samuel and that kind of thing. And it's exactly the opposite. Judges 19, 20, 21 are very likely the first thing that really happened in the book of Judges, probably during the judgeship of Othniel, the first judge. So here in Judges chapter 28, notice who's alive and who's the high priest. It says Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron. Now, Aaron was the high priest during the wilderness wanderings, and he died in the last year of the wilderness wanderings. But when he died, remember that Aaron was 3 years older than Moses. So if Moses died in the last year of the wilderness wanderings at 120, then when Aaron here dies in the last year of the wilderness wanderings, he's 123. So how old was he when he had Eleazar? Well, Eleazar had been around a very long time. So how old was Eleazar when he had Phinehas? And so for Phinehas to be the high priest, this is very early on in the Judges period. You would have the wars of Joshua, and then you would have which took 7 years, and then you would have the lifespan of the elders, according to the book of Joshua. You'd have the lifespan of the elders that outlived Joshua, and that was 24 years. So now you've got 7 and 24, so you got 31 years that Israel's been in the land, and then those elders died, and the people immediately turned to idols, and they became very ungodly. So just so you're aware of the time frame, where are we in history? Joshua has just died probably 20 years ago or so, 25 years ago. And the elders, those great elders that stood with Joshua, fought with Joshua, they've been dead 10 years maybe, 15 years maybe, not a very long time. And already what's happened without powerful leadership, and watch that. See, when we read the Bible and we get our notebooks out, and we're making notes, without powerful, decisive, godly leadership, ungodliness pops up like mushrooms. And we'll see that on both sides here. And this applies exactly to our situation, because I think when there are rioters and protesters, and there's a kind of a carnal center there, if you will, where there is unrighteousness going on. There is unrighteousness in some of the police departments. There is unrighteousness in many of the laws of the land. I see, some of the causes of these protesters are really good causes. The other side of the coin is when you burn buildings, when you kill people, when you break plate glass windows, when you put good, hardworking business people out of business. See, that's evil. So you've got evil on the side of the protesters, but then you look at what they're protesting against. You've got evil on that side too. And here are you and I, and what we've got to resist is the temptation to say, well, these guys are bad and these guys are good, and realize that there's evil on both sides. And we're going to see that here in Judges 19, 20, 21. I'm going to have to take my watch off and watch my time on this, because this is with 3 chapters. I thought about opening up with some kind of disclaimer, like, I'm sorry, this is going to be a 90-minute teaching, but but I promise it won't be that. So I'm going to have to skip over some parts and stuff. But I want to set the stage for what's going on. So we go to we go to Judges chapter 19, and this sets the stage. Verse 1, and it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel. Again, no king, no strong godly leadership, no Moses, no Joshua. Just every city has city elders, and then those city elders became corrupt, they became pagans, they became ungodly, and that shows up a lot in this record. So there was no king in Israel, but there was a man, a Levite, living in the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, who took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. Verse 2, but his concubine was unfaithful to him and went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah, and was there for a period of 4 months. Verse 3, then her husband arose and went after her to speak to her heart to bring her back. And so he took his young servant, he took some donkeys, and he shows up at her house. And to make to make this chapter, shorten this up a bit, what happens is, and you can read the record, and many of you I know are familiar with this record. And this is, by the way, a record that I don't teach very often. First of all, it's very gory and upsetting. And secondly, as we get into the middle part in Judges chapter 20, there are things about that happen with God that we really have to have some wisdom and maturity to understand. So anyway, what happens now is he shows up at the father's house. The young woman is there, his concubine, and he talks to the father, and the father keeps talking him into staying. Oh, you don't want to go home yet. Stay with me at night. Oh, in the morning. Well, you can't leave until early in the morning. You got to get some food and strengthen yourself for the journey. And then the day drags on. Well, you can't leave. It's late in the afternoon. It's going to be night. Stay till tomorrow morning and get an early start. And he does that for a few days. And finally, the young man the Levite is like, okay, no, I got to leave. And unwisely, instead of leaving early in the morning when he could probably make it home, he leaves fairly late in the evening, and he doesn't get very far. And so he stops in Gibeah. And if we look at verse 12, the servant wanted to go into Jebus, which is Jerusalem. Verse 12, but his Lord said, we will not turn aside into the foreign city that is not of the children of Israel, but we will go on to Gibeah. Gibeah is not that far, probably another hour and a half walk, something like that. And Gibeah is where later on, 350 years later or so, Saul will come from Gibeah. So this is the same town. And it's interesting because one of the things that Schlegel and I discussed as we were translating this is this interplay between this pious show, this show of godliness, and yet when you actually look at the fruit, there's so many times when godliness doesn't even play a part. Like, okay, here's a young Levite, and at this point, he sounds so godly. We're not going to go to a foreign city that's not Israelite. Remember that Jebus was Jerusalem at this time. It was David who conquered it. At this time, it was a Jebusite city, a Canaanite city. And so, this is, it's so pious. We're not going to go to a city that isn't Israelite. We're going to go to an Israelite city. But then you watch later on and his behavior completely changed, and he's terrible. And so this is one of those mini lessons. God is showing us something. You can run into people that look and say and do some very pious things, but then when you look at the totality of their life, they're cafeteria Christians. They just pick and choose things that make it work for them. And so they spent the night and went to Gibeah. Verse 15, they turned aside there to go in to spend the night at Gibeah. He went in and sat down in the open square of the city. No one took them into his house to spend the night. Verse 16, and behold, in the evening, an old man came from his work from the field. And the way it worked in the biblical world, the villages were very tight, very together. And then the fields that people owned were on the outsides of the city. So he's coming in from working the fields. And here he was coming into the city, and it says in verse 16, he was living in Gibeah, this old man, even though the men of the place were Benjamites. Verse 17, he lifted up his eyes and saw the man, the traveler, in the town square. And the old man said, where are you going? And where did you come from? And the Levite said to him, verse 18, we're passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote hill country of Ephraim. I am from there. And I went to Bethlehem in Judah. I'm going to the house of Yahweh, but nobody's taken me into his house. Yet there's both straw and feed for our donkeys, and there's bread and wine for me and for your female servant and for the young man who's with your servants. There's no lack of anything. Verse 20, the old man said, peace be to you. but let whatever you lack be on me. Only do not spend the night in the square. And this is basically exactly the same pattern we saw in Genesis chapter 19 with Sodom and Gomorrah. The two angels show up in the city of Sodom. They're going to spend the night in the square. Lot is there, and he says, oh, don't do that. Come into my house. And then the men of the city are going to surround the house, and they want to rape the men who came. And so verse 22, as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, watch this, certain sons of Belial. Huge key, put that in your notes. If you're going to get evil stirred up, it really helps to have a really genuinely evil man at the core of it, a really genuinely evil man or woman. The phrase sons of Belial is a catchphrase. The word Belial is a name for the devil, and it's basically the children of the devil. Now, in the New Testament, they're literally going to be called sons of the devil. Paul, when he went to Cyprus in the book of Acts, looked at Elymas the sorcerer and said, you child of the devil. And Jesus Christ in John chapter 8, verse 44, looked at the Pharisees and said, you are of your father, the devil. And so in the New Testament, it's much more clearly set forth, if you will. You're a child of the devil. Your father is the devil. It's very clearly set forth. These are people that have confessed and believed in their heart that the devil is their God, and they have become permanently changed and have become children of the devil in the same way that we become children of God. Not in the same exact way, but we become irrevocably children of God. They become irrevocably children of the devil. Now, the fact that this occurs has been preserved. It's been known for centuries. Well, here it is in the Old Testament. Gosh, this would be over 3,000 years ago. I mean, 3,300 plus years ago, and the scripture's talking about children of the devil. In modern folklore, you get people talking about, and they make fun of it, oh, you can sell your soul to the devil. Yes, you can. And it's going to cost you your everlasting life, and you're going to burn for a very long time in the lake of fire. But you can sell your soul to the devil, and the devil will keep his part of the bargain. You might remember Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. He writes this book, and ostensibly it's about you get your mind set right, and then you handle your money right, and then you get rich. And so you're reading the whole book, and you get to the second to the last chapter. And Napoleon Hill then reveals that what you really need to do is so focus on wanting money and power and prestige and material goods that you pick up a little guardian, a little helper, meaning a demon. And then that demon, because you're now committed to the devil, you're committed to wealth, then the demon guides you into what to buy and when to buy it and that kind of thing. That's in the second to last chapter of his book. And then right before he passes away, Napoleon Hill writes the second book. I think it's called Dealing with the Devil. You can look it up on Amazon under Napoleon Hill. But when he wrote that book, he asked his publisher, do not publish it until after I'm dead. When Napoleon Hill died and his wife inherited the rights to the book, she read it. And then she told the publisher, don't you publish this book until after I'm dead. And so they didn't. And that's why the book hasn't been out on the market for a very long time. I forget when it came out, but it's compared to the life of Napoleon Hill, it's been relatively recently because it had to go for his life and then the rest of his wife's life. But in there, he talks about the fact that you can make a deal with the devil for your soul, but be very specific. The devil will keep his promise, but he'll try to trick you into making statements that are vague, that he can cheat you. And he talks about that in his book. Well, this is children of the devil. They are doing the works of their father. They're genuinely evil. and you see them behind stuff. I guarantee you there are children of the devil behind the unrest in America today. There are children of the devil behind people making agreements like we're going to defund the police, but take your money and buy protection for ourselves. That is such demonic stuff. And you and I can't change that. You and I can't change people from being children of the devil. Children of the devil are going to be children of the devil. They can't be changed any more than you can lose your salvation. So what we have to do is pray that God will intervene. That's our weapon, prayer. That's why in Ephesians 6, after talking about the helmet and the breastplate and the belt of truth and all that stuff, praying always with all prayer and supplication. Because prayer follows right on that. That's how we bring a lot of the power of God into fruition. So here we see them. Here they come. Certain sons of Belial, verse 22, surrounded the house. They kept beating on the door. And they spoke to the owner of the house, the old man, saying, bring out the man who came into your house so we can know him sexually. And basically they wanted to rape the man. And possibly the man believed they wanted to rape him to death, which we'll see in the next chapter. But the man, the owner of the house, went out to them and said, no, my brothers, really? You're going to call these guys your brothers? Please do not act so wickedly, since this man has come into my house. Do not do this disgraceful folly. He's leaning on the Old Testament rules of hospitality, that you protected a man who came under your roof. But this is where, you know, the rules in the thinking in the Old Testament was so different that any place that I know I can go in my mind, and I'm probably imagine you're in the same place, but they just thought so differently about things. Hold on just a second here. My daughter just came in from work and I need to yell at her, the chicken's in the oven. I'll be right back. Okay, slight interlude. Sorry about that. But anyway, so they're going to protect the men, but they're not going to protect the women. And so verse 24, the old man says, behold, here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Abuse them and do with them whatever is good in your eyes, but do not do to this man any such disgraceful folly. So you're probably like me. You just can't even go there. It's like, what in the world is going on? Verse 25, expressing the Hebrew pretty clearly, the men did not want to listen to him. They wanted the man. They wanted homosexual rape. They didn't want to listen to him, but the old man seized his concubine, the Levite's concubine, and made her go out to them outside. And basically they raped her and abused her all night until the morning, sent her away when the day began to dawn. Another interesting lesson about the evil that occurs at night. Just the darkness is more than metaphorical. When it gets dark, evil multiplies. It's something we got to be aware of, something that we pray against. And so they sent her away after raping her all night. Of course, I imagine there was massive bleeding and internal damage and gosh knows what else. And so basically she was on her way to dying. Verse 26, and toward the morning, and it's just the hard-heartedness of this Levite. Remember I said, you know, he looks so pious. We're not going to go to a city where they're pagans, but I'm going to let my concubine get raped all night. And I'm not going to, until I wake up, you know, and get my beauty rest, I'm not going to go to the door and find out how she is, you know. And people this is a reflection of some of the things that we are going to see. If the world really goes downhill, this is the kind of hard-heartedness and evil that we're likely to see. We prepare for it. The word of God prepares us for it. You know, so verse 27, and her Lord rose up in the morning and he opened the doors of his house and went to go on his way. Did I read verse 26? In the morning, the woman made her way back and fell down at the door of the man's house where her Lord was, and remained there until it was light. Nobody'd even open the door for her. Verse 27, and her Lord rose in the morning and he opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way. And behold, the woman, his concubine, was fallen down at the door of his house with her hands on the threshold. This is so sad. I almost can't even read it without crying. I'm like, God, how can people be so hard-hearted? But if you think you're going to not see this, if the world continues to go downhill, you're naive. This is the kind of stuff we're going to see. It's why we've got to be prepared to help ourselves. We've got to be prepared to defend ourselves, got to be prepared to help our family, got to be prepared to help our neighbor, got to be prepared to get our hands dirty and get in the fight and stop this kind of junk from happening. And look how hard-hearted the guy is, verse 28. And he said to her, get up, let's go. And that's a pretty good reflection of the brevity and harshness of the Hebrew. You know, we didn't water that down in English. I mean, the Hebrew is very clipped and very harsh, very hard. Get up, let's go. You know, couldn't, I can't even go there. But there was no answer. Of course, yeah, no answer. She died. So what's he do? He put her up on the donkey. The man arose, went to his place, came to his house, took a knife, laid hold of his concubine, and divided her limb by limb into 12 pieces. I've tried to imagine how you get 12 pieces out of a human body. All I can figure is you get 2 pieces out of each arm, that's 4. You got a head, that's 5. You got a torso, that's 6. And cut the legs up, you know, from the thigh to the knee, one part, from the knee to the ankle, another part, and the feet. I mean, that's the best I can do. I see Gary and Karen Tyson are on, and Gary's a doctor. He can probably coach us in many ways, many better ways to cut a human body up into 12 pieces. But in any case, that's what he did. Cut her up into 12 pieces, sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. Of course, there's 12 tribes. Verse 30, and it came to pass that all who saw it said, never has been and never has been seen anything like this from the day the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt to this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak up. And again, here we see the inconsistency of the man. He's not concerned enough about his concubine to help her when she needs help, even open the door, get her in, see if he could save her life. Doesn't care at all about that. But once she's dead, all of a sudden he's all concerned and he wants revenge. And there's just, this is serious evil that's going on here. So chapter 20. And so in chapter 20, what happens is the Benjamites assemble. We see in verse 1, all the children of Israel went out, and the congregation was assembled as one man, meaning they had one voice, one heart, one intention. From Dan to Beersheba, that's the traditional limits. Dan to the north, Beersheba to the south of the promised land, along with the land of Gilead. Gilead is in the Transjordan. It's part of the tribe of Manasseh in the east of the Jordan River. And they gathered to Yahweh at Mitzvah. So that's probably the fact that they gathered to Yahweh tells you that that's where the high priest would have been with the ephod, and they may have carried the ark there as well. Verse 2, and I like that the Hebrew here is literally cornerstones, the cornerstones of all the people. These are our leaders. The leaders are the cornerstones of our civilization, and they've always been. The leaders have always been, or always supposed to be, the cornerstones of the civilization. And I love the fact when you understand that, and we understand how Jesus Christ's righteousness and the fact that he's going to rule, and when he comes to earth and rules, he's going to rule with a rod of iron. He's going to make sure there's no civil disobedience, you know, and he's going to make sure there isn't stealing and lying and raping and all that stuff. He's going to rule with a rod of iron. And what's Jesus Christ called? The chief cornerstone. And we need men and women in our society to stand up and live in the cornerstone positions. You know, there was a saying, you know, if you sit in the chair, do the job. If you're going to take the position, then get the job done. We've got some mealy-mouthed leaders, and we've got some really ungodly leaders, and we need to pray. And we also need to write letters, and we need to discuss, and we need to talk it up, and we need to get people thinking rightly to the best of our ability and pray for God to move also. I mean, I think about Jonah, and what are the chances that one prophet alone and unarmed walk into the capital city of the mightiest empire on the face of the globe at that time, the Assyrian Empire? He walks into Nineveh and says, 40 days and this place is going to be destroyed. Here's the king of Nineveh. the most powerful, ostensibly the most powerful man on the earth. He gets off his throne, he puts on sackcloth, he sits in ashes, and he issues a command that everybody repent. You know, great things can happen, but somebody's got to speak up. So verse 2 says, the cornerstones of all the people, even of all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God. And there were 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword from the 11 tribes of Israel. And of course, word got to the Benjamites, verse 3, that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the children of Israel said, tell us, how did this happen? And then the Levite describes how things happened. And then look at verse 7. Behold, all of you, here's the Levite talking. Behold, all of you, O children of Israel, give your advice and counsel here. See, here's this guy that let his concubine get raped to death, wouldn't help her, wouldn't open the door, even comes out, she's lying there. Probably, I'd be very surprised if she wasn't bleeding from a lot of places, lying there on the threshold, and you get up, let's go. You know, and yet all of a sudden here it's like, well, you know, we're right here right now. We've got to move forward and do something about this. Such inconsistency. Verse 8, and the people arose as one man, saying, none of us will go to his tent, nor will any of us turn aside to his house. But this is the thing that we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. So the high priest was there because he had the ephod with the Urim and Thummim in it. He would reach in, and the lot, the stone that he drew out of his ephod, the breastplate, would then direct the Israelites as to what tribe was to go up and war first or be at the front lines of the battle and that kind of thing. And then they also set up their supply line. Verse 10, we will take 10 men of 100 through all the tribes of Israel, 100 of 1,000, 1,000 out of 10,000 to get food. So basically they have their warriors, and then one person, you know, out of 10, instead of fighting in the battle, was going to be helping to make sure that the army was supplied. And then they gathered together against the city, united as one man in verse 11. And verse 12, the tribes of Israel sent men throughout all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this evil that has happened among you? So now give over the men, the sons of Belial. And this is interesting because the Israelites knew, you know, at some fundamental level, they knew that there were really genuinely evil people behind what had happened. And so they're saying, we give those guys up who were in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and put away evil from Israel. That was a just request. You know, this is like, okay, you guys live there. You know who the fomenters of this was. You know who was in on this. You know, give them up that we may put them to death. And then ostensibly we can go home and justice will be done. And what's astounding here, that's a righteous request. But then the verse goes on and says, but Benjamin did not want to listen to the voice of their brothers, the children of Israel. And it says Benjamin. And it's in the singular. It's the whole tribe. In the same way that all the Israelites gathered as one man to get justice in this situation, the tribe of Benjamin, for some crazy reason, decides that they're going to support what happened in Gibeah. They're not going to deal with it themselves. Hey, it was a stranger. He came from out of town. His concubine got raped. Oh, well. They're not going to deal with the problem themselves. But the entire tribe of Benjamin is going to get together and defend these evil people. This is history. This stuff really happened. And it'll happen today. I'm astounded. Some of the things that happen in Congress with some of the things that I just consider to be totally ungodly and totally offbeat, some of the resolutions and stuff. And then you go to get to the bottom of who made the decision, and all these supporters gather and defend as one voice. What are we doing? We're defending evil? What? Huh? You know, what? But see, there's nothing new under the sun. The whole tribe of Benjamin defended people that were born again of the devil. They'd sold their soul to the devil. And the entire tribe of Benjamin is going to defend them. ostensibly because they were such powerful political people and they had golden voices and they probably passed out lots of political favors and they'd probably given money to lots of nice causes. And so they had risen to the top of society. And all of a sudden the Benjamites are going to defend them. And we're naive if we don't think that happens today, and we can't be a party to that. We've got to pray against it. That when there are evil people, that their supporters wake up and realize that you're participating in evil if you are supporting evil. You know, I mean, Christ made it very plain. He said, he who is not with me is against me. There's no fence here. There's no middle ground here. We're either for Christ or we're against Christ. And if we're supporting evil people, we're against Christ. And you know, at least we can't say that 3,300 years ago, the same thing wasn't going on, because it sure was. So the Benjamites didn't want to listen to the voice of their brothers, the children of Israel. Verse 14, and the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities of Gibeah to do battle against the children of Israel. So the Benjamites here are going to do battle. This is pretty darn gutsy, because verse 15, the children of Benjamin were numbered on that day out of the cities, 26,000 men who drew sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were 700 chosen men. So, wow, the Benjamites have 26,700 men. Do you remember earlier on how many men the Israelites had? 400,000. That's pretty darn gutsy. Now, wait a minute. Who makes that kind of stupid decision? Again, children of Belial, evil people at the top, unwise people at the top, and they're making a decision that's going to cost the lives of basically the entire tribe of Benjamin, except for 600 people. The entire tribe is wiped out. Lock, stock, and barrel, men, women, children, babies, whole thing wiped out except for 600 people. Why? Because there are children of the devil behind the scenes manipulating things. And I know a lot of times what happens in our world, because I get tempted with this, so I'm going to assume that some of you get tempted with this, that you start looking around and you realize there is so much evil and it's so big that you just think, I don't even know how to deal with this. I'm just going to kind of back out gracefully and kind of watch the battle from a distance. And that's the temptation of that we go through, rather than putting on our Christian soldier outfit, taking on the whole armor of God and wading into the battle. The battle is so huge. It is so multifaceted. There are so many evil people that sometimes we lose our focus and we lose our courage, and we're like, I can't even deal with this. And we go to back out. We can't do that, guys. We can't do that. God needs us. We're his family. We're his soldiers. He gave us the armor so we could fight, you know, not so we could kind of polish it and sit on the sidelines. So so basically you got the 26,000 men and then the 700 chosen men that could fight. So then you've got the 400,000 again. And verse 18, and this is one of the things that why I don't teach this record publicly very often. In fact, I've only taught it publicly a few times in my whole life, because verse 18 says, the children of Israel arose, went to Bethel, and inquired of God. So probably at Bethel, they had the great altar, the tabernacle, that kind of thing. And they said, who is to go up first for us to battle against the children of Benjamin? And Yahweh said, Judah first. And so if they went to God and said, how do we do this? And God says, Judah should go first. Then what I'm thinking normally is, okay, they got revelation, they got their marching orders, they know how to do this. When I see this happen with Joshua, they get a victory. When I see this happen with David, they get a victory. You see this happen with here in this situation, and they get the revelation from God to move forward. And so verse 19, so the children of Israel rose up in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Israel set themselves in battle formations against them at Gibeah. And the children of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and destroyed of the Israelites on that day 22,000 men. Jeez, All Benjamin even had was 26,700. And on that one day, they killed 22,000 Israelites, cut them down to the ground. Wait a minute. What happened to the revelation from God? What about the revelation that Judah would be the front lines of the battle? Why wasn't there success? See, this is why I don't teach this record publicly very often, because, we've got to have a confidence in God, and we've got to believe that if God gives me revelation, it's going to work. I'm going to put all my eggs in his basket, and I'm going to go for it 100% because I got revelation. And I want to have the confidence that if I got the revelation and I move forward, then the thing's going to work. And the fact of the matter is, I now have experienced enough times in my life where I've seen it not work, where there's other things at play that I don't fully understand. And here, I think one of the things I do understand is one of the things at play is the sin in the camp of Israel. Yes, there was tremendous sin in the camp in Benjamin, but there was sin in the camp in Israel, and that had to be dealt with. And so they went into battle, even though they had revelation from God and how to do it. They went into battle and they lost. And it's one of those things that happens occasionally in life, and we've got to be honest about it. And so they killed, what happened, let's see, the children of Israel, they killed 22,000 men, verse 22, but the people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and set the battle formations again in the place where they had set the battle formations on the first day. But then they did something else. And the children of Israel went up and wept before Yahweh until evening. And they inquired of Yahweh, saying, should I again draw near to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? And Yahweh said, go up against him. So once again, we've got the revelation. Okay, God, I heard you this time. We're supposed to attack Benjamin. I got it. Verse 24. So the children of Israel came near against the children of Benjamin on the second day. And Benjamin went forth against them out of Gibeah on the second day, and again destroyed down to the ground 18,000 men of the children of Israel. 22,000 the first day, 18,000 now. Collectively, what's that, 30,000 men or 40,000. So 40,000 guys. And Benjamin's entire army numbered 26,700. And an amazing thing. And so verse 26, then all the children of Israel and the army, this time everybody, went up and came to Bethel and wept and sat there before Yahweh and fasted that day until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before Yahweh. And so I believe that what happened here, and this is just a guess because it doesn't say specifically, but I believe what happened here is this time when the Israelites went up before Yahweh and they wept and they fasted and they sat there and they offered offerings, that they did some kind of personal repentance and cleansing, that they were beginning in some way to deal with what their faults were and what their problems were, which is another one of these lessons that we have to learn, which is that when you're going to enter into the spiritual battle, make sure you're humble enough to realize that you've got sin, I've got sin. When we enter into the spiritual battle, then we want to go in with all humility, thanking God. Look, what did Abraham say? I'm dust and ashes when he stood before God in, I think it's Genesis 19. I'm dust and ashes, and yet I'm standing before you. And we go into battle for God, but we understand who we are and that our power, our ability comes from God. And so here they wept and they fasted and they offered offerings. In verse 27, the children of Israel inquired of Yahweh, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And then here's your verse, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, should I once again go out to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother, or should I cease? Yahweh said, go up, For tomorrow I will give it into your hand. Now God gives specific revelation that they'll actually get a victory. And so basically, so Israel set ambushes all around against Gibeah, and they set up their battle formations, and they did a ploy like Joshua had done when Joshua attacked Ai in Joshua chapter 7, which is that they sent ambushes behind the city. Then they sent men to look like they were going to attack the city. When the Benjamites came out, the men turned around and ran away like they were fleeing. The Benjamites thought, oh, they're fleeing like we had before. And when the Benjamite army abandoned the city of Gibeah, the ambush then moved into the city of Gibeah, killed all the people that were left there. That would be all of the older men, the younger men, the children, the women. The whole city was completely exterminated. And then the people who were running, the army that was running away from Benjamin, turned around. By that time, the army that was in Gibeah was coming out of the city, and they just destroyed the men of Gibeah. So that's basically what happened in that. And then verse 44, there fell of Benjamin 18,000 men. All these were men of valor. So that's the main battlefront. 18,000 guys died. And people from the army, verse 45, they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. That's to the northeast. And they gleaned, the Israelite army gleaned of them 5,000 men. And if you understand what gleaning is, it's like when you are harvesting a crop or you're harvesting grapes and you leave a few, and then the gleaners come through and pick up the ones that were left from the main harvesters. And here, the main army had killed 18,000 men. At least we know 7,000 men managed to get away. But these gleaners came and picked these 5,000 men off, and then struck down another 2,000 after that. So the men of Benjamin who fell that day were 25,000 men, and then there were others. And then verse 47, but 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon and stayed in the rock of Rimmon 4 months. And we're going to find out those are the only 600 survivors from the entire tribe of Benjamin. Why? Now, this is again where I see men of Belial on both sides of the battle, because, okay, the army of Benjamin is destroyed. Gibeah, the offending city, is burned to the ground. Men, women, children, the entire population is completely wiped out. We should be done here. But no, instead, verse 48, then the men of Israel returned to the cities of the children of Benjamin and struck them with the mouth of the sword, both the entire city and the livestock and all that they found. Moreover, all the cities that they found, they set up in fire. Joshua chapter 18 lists 26 Benjamite cities in the tribe of Benjamin. So who in the heck gave the order that you would now decide that you're going to destroy every single city in Benjamin? Men, women, children, babies, even the livestock, everything's killed. Who the heck gave that order? That, I guarantee you, that did not come from God. That's the kind of thing where there's evil on both sides. And that's why you and we can't pick a side in this battle. We've got to pick godliness. Jesus Christ is our Lord. He's the general, the commanding general. Our job is to do what we can to be help, to be salt, to be light, and to speak into situations, and to help people where we can and how we can, and to just be aware that there are people on both sides of the conflict who are aligned with the devil, who are giving horrible directions and commands, and want horrible things to happen. And I mean, as Schlegel and I read this week, we did it yesterday. It's hard to even process who in the world gave the order to go to the other 25 cities in Benjamin and kill everybody and the livestock. Wow. You know, there's such serious ungodliness from both sides. And then chapter 21, now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah because there were 600 Benjamites left. Well, none of us will give his daughter to Benjamin as a wife. And the people came to Bethel, and this is the Israelites. They came to Bethel and sat there before God until evening and lifted up their voices and wept a great weeping. Yeah, because I'm sure there were a lot of good people that were kind of going like, what in the heck just happened? And why? You know? And they said, oh, Yahweh, God of Israel, why has this happened in Israel that today there should be one tribe counted missing from Israel? And this is very natural. You get evil people at the top giving commands, and people, they're kind of blinded and they're wowed by who's talking or the position of authority they have or whatever it is. And then they're giving these commands and people are running around. But then when the smoke clears and everything settles down, it's like, what just happened? Why did we do that? What, huh? How did this come to pass? And there was massive confusion. If you remember in the book of Acts, when the mob gathers in Ephesus, it says that the greater part of the mob didn't even know why they were there. So many times, you know, they call it mob mentality, or maybe a better word for it. But that's basically the mob starts to move. And then when everything's settled and the smoke clears and people don't even know, why was I there? What did I do? What happened? Why was it done? And that's what's going on here. They just killed... They just murdered the people in 25 cities, men, women, and children, and animals. And all of a sudden it's over with. And they're like, why did that happen? See, God's teaching us lessons here. This can happen in America. And we need to pray like crazy against it. Absolutely. And verse 5, the people built an altar there and they offered burnt offerings and peat offerings. Verse 5, and the children of Israel said, who is there among all the tribes of Israel who did not come up with the assembly to Yahweh? For they had made a great oath against anyone who did not come up to Yahweh to Mizpah, saying, he will be put to death, yes, death. So the Israelites had said, you know, they knew they needed the manpower to fight Benjamin. So they made this great oath that if any of the cities of Israel will not support this war effort, that the city's going to be put to death. And again, I personally see evil godliness and direction behind this. But watch what happens. We're going to kill we're going to kill off any city that didn't come. And so this is their oath. And then the children of Israel in verse 6 are grieved. And then they wonder, verse 7, how can we provide wives for those who remain, since we've sworn by Yahweh not to give them our daughters a wife? And they said, which one is there of the tribes of Israel who did not come up to Yahweh to Mizpah? And behold, no one had come up from Jabesh Gilead. So Jabesh Gilead is in the tribe of Manasseh in the Transjordan, and nobody from that town had come up. What was the sworn oath then? We're going to put the whole town to death. Except, and this is where now morals become not what did we commit to do, but what's expedient to do. So what they committed to do was put the town to death. It's unclear whether anybody in the town even knew about this. But in any case, so verse 10, the congregation sends 12,000 of the most violent men go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead, along with the women and the little ones, the babies. So now we have Israelites going to annihilate an Israelite city. But wait a minute, you're gonna devote to destruction every male and every woman who's lain with a man. Verse 12, and they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man by lying with him. And they brought them to the camp to Shiloh. All of a sudden, hey, we need wives for these 600 men. So it's convenient for us now not to keep our oath. See, they look so religious in so many different areas. But all of a sudden, it's inconvenient to keep our oath because then we have nobody to marry the 600 men. So it's convenient to break our oath. Well, then, if you're going to break your oath, why wouldn't it be convenient to simply spare the lives of the people in Jabesh Gilead? If you're going to break the oath, you're going to break the oath. But in these situations where you have evil on both sides, there's so many wacko things going on. And that's why you and I need to stay centered. We need to stay focused. We need to pray. And we need to make sure that Jesus Christ is our commanding general. We're following his orders, and we're doing the best we can for ourselves, for our families, for the people around us, for the family of God. And so anyway, they get these 400 young virgins, and one of the things that's left out is how do you tell who's a virgin and who's not? All that stuff is left out of there. And the problem is then they're 200 people short, 200 women short for the 600 men. So they resort to kidnapping. Again, well, you know, talk about throwing your morals out the window. You can read the rest of the record, but they end up kidnapping 200 other women from the area of Shiloh and taking them to the Benjamite men. And that's how hundreds of years later, the tribe of Benjamin had rebuilt its population, and Saul came from the tribe of Benjamin. And in fact, Saul came from the town of Gibeah, where this whole thing started. So thank you for your attention. This is, you know, it's tough to cover 3 chapters, but this is just such an amazing record. And to realize it astounds me that Bill and I are translating this chapter, and it's like you open the newspaper and it's like, there it is. Which one do you want? Here's the one from today, and here's the one from 3,300 years ago. It's the same story. There's men of Belial, children of Belial running around. There's evil people on both sides. There's ungodliness occurring on both sides. So the Word of God is definitely alive and well today. And thank you all so much for your attention. I really appreciate your being here tonight. And I'll open the floor for comments, questions, discussion, whatever you guys want to do.